Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Double and Radio Gamescast. This is a show that we run. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely duo of co-hosts, Brett
Hello.
and Wyatt.
Wait, we're on a show?
We're
we do a show?
live?
We're live?
All right.
Is this on? Is this thing on?
Every
Look,
time
we're
you do
all-
the countdown, my body's just like, sneeze, sneeze, you have to sneeze, you have to sneeze now.
Look, this is going to be an interesting episode. We have E3 just happened a little while ago, and we finally can do our full wrap-up and thoughts about it. It's going to be kind of split into two parts. This episode is going to be mostly our general thoughts, things that we think are things we're looking forward to, what kind of disappointed us, and just kind of going in over the major announcements to make sure anyone that missed E3 is still in the loop about what major things are happening. Next week, we are going to be doing our final tier list decision, picking what conferences go where, and specifics about like what really makes those decisions for us and how we actually rate those conferences. So that'll be next week. This week we're doing just our impressions. With that said, let's get started. All right, we got
Oh boy.
the
so
two of
reluctant.
you here.
hmm
What was that, Wyatt? What were you gonna say?
You sounded so reluctant. You're like, all right, let's get going.
Look, the second half of this podcast is behind the scenes. That right now E3 has coincided with all of us being in very different positions.
Yeah.
True.
So
It's true.
it's a little jank. There's the reason we don't have cameras right now is I'm not on Wi-Fi where I can upload a video with cameras because the bandwidth is not big enough. So we're doing what we can with what we got, but that's fine. We'll be back in the actual places next week, and everything will be sorted out as normal. With that said, let's get started. Let's talk about some games. So before we get into the main recap, what I just want to do is I want both of you to say one word. It's going to be the name of a publisher, and I want it to be the publisher that you really just think shouldn't have been there. All right, in 3, 2, 1, go.
Gearbox.
Bandai Namco.
Look, I'm gonna go with Take-Two Interactive.
Oh yeah.
You know what?
Take-Two
That's
and
true.
and
yeah, but that
Coke.
one's mean.
Koch Media. Recently
not-
learned that is actually how it's pronounced.
No, it's not Coke, but it's more aligned with Coke than Koch.
No,
It's
it is
German.
Koch Media. I am
it's-
dead serious. There's a whole debate about this. Okay, we're getting
the
into this because
worst
it's E3
word.
related. It is Koch Media. Most people think it's Coke Media. It is Koch Media because at an E3 party last year, there were a bunch of games journalists in a room, and they've talked about this on multiple games journalist podcasts. Easy Allies, I think, and MinMax have both talked about this. They went into a room with these guys to look at some games, and all of the PR people from that company called it Koch Media.
What?
So
I'm
I
not gonna
don't
say
know.
That's worse. Look. I'm not gonna say it's worse than Goo, but
Exclamation
It's just
point.
confusing.
yeah.
It's
If it
Goo,
was just regular
exclamation
Goo
point, yeah.
without exclamation point, it would be worse. But the fact that Goo has an exclamation point makes it worse.
But hey, at least we got some choices for bottom of the board.
Is that a good thing? I don't know if that's a good thing.
Hey, we also got some competition at the top of the board too. It's not all bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get the biggest change for the C3 out of the way first. No in-person conferences.
Yes.
How do you two feel about the lack of crowds?
I'm kind of in two minds on it. On the one hand, I think that they don't have to accommodate for cheering and crowds and stuff like that, so the shows can be a tiny bit more focused and like streamlined, and they don't have to like try and wow the crowd that much. But at the same time, I feel like the crowds yelling and cheering kind of helps
Yeah.
with the hype a little bit,
I miss
and
them.
it gets you really excited. I did kind of miss it. I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, especially for stuff like the Arcane reveals and everything. Just I want to see people's reaction to these reveals that are happening, and like the crowd actually, what they're thinking, because crowd reactions can give you a lot of insight into what the general audience of games is feeling about specific things.
What was running through my head was when they revealed God of War and how much of a surprise
Exactly.
it was, and people in the audience just flipped their crap. They went crazy, and
Dude, go back and look at
it was great.
Sony's 2015 conference when they revealed right in sequence Final Fantasy VII Remake and Shenmue 3 in the span of like 5 minutes. The crowd was
Yeah.
great.
Last couple years when Sony was actually at E3, they had some great press conferences. But
All right, Brett.
well.
What are your thoughts?
I am also middling, I think, on this because I mean, I mostly see the crowd interaction as like a funny, silly thing. Like the like your breathtaking thing, or the guy that was clearly like paid to yell like "woo" or whatever,
Yeah.
like in the same
Yeah.
exact way over and over again. Like I'm just because I'm a very evil person in that like having more things to go wrong will be like, ooh, something's gonna happen. It's gonna be really stupid, and I'm gonna laugh at it. But like at the same time,
You also watch
it's
wrestling.
it's yeah. So like, and the thing with having crowds for wrestling goes along with this, where it's like that allows the people on the stage and watching to be like, "Oh, okay, am I the weird one for not liking this guy? Everyone else is cheering him." We're like, "Okay, yeah, everyone's like actually booing him. This is about what I think is going on with this guy." But when it's in a very sterile, serene, human, human devoid environment, then you kind of just gotta deal with the Twitch chat, which is always negative towards everything. So it was a little hard to gauge what people thought while watching it.
All right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that crowds add, or rather take away for me, is that having a crowd puts pressure on companies that really
Yes.
should not be having a conference.
Yes.
So that if you aren't ready to have an E3 conference, you don't have an E3 conference. There's a reason E3 is very hype filled, and it's often because like this is the time when companies save their announcements for. It's when they show you what they've been doing for the past year. And this year we got a lot of people that wanted to show what they were doing for the past 2 years, but a lot of them had nothing to show. And yet still showed up.
It's
So-
it's the exact thing. I was talking about this with both of you at some point, where I think whether E3 is good or not is completely dependent on the kind of yearly cycle that we're in. Because there are some years where there's a lot to show off and it's really exciting, and then there are some years like this year where it's not like no one's working on anything. It's just nothing's ready to announce, or they just released all of their big stuff, and so
Yeah,
there's
or
just
that it's
not
like
nearly as much to show
really
off.
a small subset of publishers that were in a position or like willingly held off last year, and that's
Yeah.
what made them ready for this year. Like especially
bec-
I think in Nintendo's case, like they definitely had a kind of a lackluster start of this year because they weren't
Mhm.
really revealing a lot, but then they come in swinging. So
Yeah, and I think, and specifically, I pointed out if Ubisoft had an E3, like a traditional E3 last year, there would have been so much for them to talk about because they had 3 or 4 big releases last year.
definitely.
Whereas this year they've already released their big stuff. We're definitely not going to be seeing anything about an Immortals 2, another Watch Dogs, another Assassin's Creed. So really, it was just kind of Far Cry, and it was just Rabbids. And
See, like
that's
my biggest
kind of
question
it.
here is like, especially for Ubisoft, why did they reveal Far Cry so early?
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. It's because like yes, the vast majority of like most companies, like, why did you even have your own press conference? But the thing is that like Gearbox and Ubisoft could have had perfectly serviceable press conferences if they just didn't reveal the big things that they were doing
Elsewhere.
multiple days beforehand.
And the
Like,
crazy thing is,
yes,
not
that
only
PC gaming show would have been like an hour shorter or whatever, but like,
that
did,
probably would have
did
been
anyone
better
want
for
it
the
to be?
PC show, to
Yeah,
be
did
honest.
anyone want it to be 2 hours long in the first place?
Yeah, and we kind of noticed after the Xbox conference, but like the best showing of Far Cry was at the Xbox conference and not the Ubisoft conference. It
Yeah,
was nice to see a bit of
Yeah,
the villain
that
and
was
doing his
really
thing,
weird.
but the gameplay, the bit that excite people, a
The bit
tiny
that gets
bit
people
more.
hyped to learn more about the story, right? Because if I
Yeah.
see gameplay that I like, I'm gonna want to learn more about the story.
Yeah.
and then they just put it in reverse.
Yeah, and because it's an Ubisoft game, I don't think there's a lot of people that are expecting anything spectacular out of the story anyways, because it's an Ubisoft game. So they're really there for the gameplay for Ubisoft specifically. So just to not have that. And it's weird too. They have a lot of like very flashy show-offy clips of gameplay, but nothing of straight gameplay. But everything we've seen, it's like it seems so developed in terms of what they showed that I feel like they could have given us like more concrete gameplay, if that makes sense. Like they
Yeah.
had surprisingly a lot of things to show off, but it was never
Well, it
actual
feels
gameplay.
like they're holding back because they're afraid of the reaction, but all of the signs from what they're doing point to it being really good. So
It definitely shows a lack of confidence in that respect.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the big thing is I think the game looks great from what we've seen. At least if you're a fan of those like Far Cry type games, I don't think it's gonna be anything that'll drag you to it if you're not already into them. But for fans of that, it looks like it's a really fun first person
Ubisoft
romp,
game.
and you know, I think Ubisoft needs to lean into that. Like, don't be afraid of it because that's what people want.
You definitely have enough
yeah.
fans to sustain your franchise, you know.
Absolutely.
It's not like you're in need of a bigger fan base. It's Far Cry, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So now that we've kind of gotten our general first impressions and the biggest changes from this year to past years out of the way, let's do a quick look at some of the things that were announced that people might have missed, hopefully haven't, because they're pretty big. But there's a chance that these announcements were missed by you if you weren't paying attention to E3. There's a few things that I think we want to get out of the way. And hey Brett, can you say the two words?
Elden Ring.
Oh, Elden Ring. All right, we kicked off E3 in a big way. Well, not even E3, but pre-E3 Jeff Keighley's wild ride with
E3.
him teasing everyone repeatedly that he would show off Elden Ring. He came through this year. The rumors paid off. We got to see Elden Ring, and hey, it looks like Dark Souls with a horse that can double jump. So, I'm in. I don't think there's a lot more I need to say about that.
There was the interview with Mr. Director Man Miyazaki that had like a lot more games played specific stuff. But I mean, it's like visually, like you can definitely say it's Dark Souls with a sword, but like there's so much wild stuff that they didn't even show in that. Like there's basically monster catching. There's sword arts and stuff that you can like learn from one weapon and then move to another one and stuff
Yeah.
like that. There's like mechanics on mechanics on mechanics. It looks insane.
And they've also said, I believe Miyazaki talked about difficulty and that this is going to be slightly less difficult. In general, like it's not designed to be as punishing as Souls games generally are. Still no difficulty selection, but not designed to be as punishing, which I think is definitely an interesting turn. I'm waiting to reserve judgment because I like my Souls games in both ways. I like the ones that are easy and I like the ones that are hard, so I'll be a fan of it likely regardless, but I am looking forward to see what this game turns out to be. And that gameplay looked really good, so
Oh yeah.
glad that we started off with a bang. All right. Continuing on, any other things that people want to talk about from that Summer Game Fest kickoff live?
I don't remember anything.
I don't remember anything either.
Yeah,
There was
I
a lot of
I do agree.
a lot of like actors that just like showed up that just didn't have any facet of relation to any of the things that they were talking about half the time. I feel like, but they were like Jeff Goldblum was there. I don't even think he was in the game that he was talking about.
Well,
there was
a
a lot
Jurassic
of
Park
that.
game, so
I
he had
mean,
to talk about Jurassic Park.
he's pretty synonymous with the franchise, so it kind of makes sense. Okay.
I did forget that was something that he
Part
talked
of me so full disclaimer, I should have done a bit more looking up and like refreshing myself before coming on here, but part of me is actually happy that I didn't because it kind of speaks to how memorable the show was, right? If I can't
Very.
remember it and it's been less than a week
Mhm.
or a week in some cases. So I don't know. I kind of made the right decision and the wrong decision at the same time. But from what I remember, it's a lot of stuff that we were going to see later on in the show anyway.
And there were some indies that looked pretty cool. I do think like our biggest issue with Kickoff Live, and we'll talk more about this when we're doing the rankings, is just that it really felt like it didn't need to be an hour and a half long.
No.
Like that is one of those showcases that really could have benefited from being cut down to cut it at an hour, cut it at 45 minutes. We didn't need 3 musical performances.
No.
Didn't
need Weezer.
Yeah, but it was Weezer that.
Well, the thing, I'm actually okay with the Weezer one because the Weezer was performing part of the soundtrack of that game, and it was also a trailer for Wave Break. At the time, I was very confused because they weren't saying the name of the game for a while, and it looked just like a lot of color vomit. But since then, I have remembered that Wave Break is a game that has been shown off repeatedly for a while. It was actually a Stadia exclusive for a full year. It just now made it to everything else.
Good for them.
Yeah, and it's a cool game. It's a cool game.
We are forgetting the biggest announcement other than Elden Ring that was in the Summer Games Fest, and that's the Xbox fridge.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think that really speaks to the show. Like, I think we're all loosely fans of Jeff Keighley, and just we're rooting for Jeff Keighley to put on a good show because we know he cares. But
yeah,
he really needs to cut some of the fluff. We all are excited for the video games. All you need to do is show us the video games for people to be excited.
Yeah,
that's really it.
My man still has some fly kicks though.
He
always can't knock him for his fit.
Absolutely.
Cannot knock him for his fit.
I do think Kickoff Live had a really good stage and like setup for being virtual. It felt very natural.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other conferences, which did go a long way, but I do think we like all started running out of steam about a third of the way into it. We realized it was going to be a while.
Oh, and I'm pretty sure you can like stop me and say what show that this was in instead if I'm remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this was the one where they just spent like 10 minutes talking about a company that didn't have anything to show yet.
Yeah, they talked about Prime Matter, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Jeff was just like, here's the logo. Show the pictures you took 20 minutes beforehand.
They didn't make it clear what this was. Oh, no, actually, wait. There was Prime Matter and there was another one. There was a game studio that was announced that wasn't doing anything. Prime Matter was the publisher that got created that is publishing a bunch of things. Because they actually had announcements, but there was another one. I don't remember their name.
I wanna give kudos to shining light on studios who are obviously very new and probably could use the attention. But if you have nothing to show off, why are you here?
And like they were talking about their game design philosophy, but they weren't. There was nothing to show with it. Like we're developers here, at least to a degree, and the biggest thing when you're talking about like game development and you're trying to get people excited that are in this like showcase format, you need to show them examples of why they should be excited.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a thing of like showing not. It's this thing of showing not telling. 110%.
Well, you can tell, just tell over the showing.
No, but there has to be both. Like that's what E3 is all about, right? It's like if you say, "Oh, we're announcing such and such game," but you have nothing to accompany it. Like
you gotta have
people
something.
Are gonna be like, "What is this?" B, they're gonna get
like
bored.
At least give me some key visuals or just something. Like, because if you're working on something, there have to exist like concept art sketches or something.
Even
right?
if it's just gonna be a thing for your studio, right? Even if it's not an actual game you're working on, have some kind of tech demo. It's like, okay, we have this kind of design philosophy. Have something to show off, even if it's not an actual game.
Or be a studio run by Hideo Kojima, or that.
Yeah.
That's the only other situation that's acceptable. Okay, so moving on, we had some events on day 1 of E3. There wasn't a ton here. It was Ubisoft. Actually, Devolver was on day 1. I forgot about that. So that was fun.
Right. I did like Devolver this year.
Are we gonna have our Devolver debate now or next time?
We can have a little bit of it. We're gonna cut it short just so we can keep moving on at a certain point.
Okay.
But we're going to start with Ubisoft. We had Ubisoft in the Wholesome Direct first. Wholesome Direct, we didn't live stream that, but it was a showcase of a bunch of like very wholesome indie games. All of them look really good. I would definitely recommend if you are interested in like games like Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, just things that are feel-good games. Spiritfarer, absolutely. Take a look at the Wholesome Direct. It's an hour of just games. Like that's always a great thing for a conference. If we had known what that was going to be, we probably would have done more of a included it in the tier list or something. But we didn't have a precedent for that, so it was hard to talk about. Then Ubisoft came along and had a weird show. I don't know.
It's okay.
I wasn't bored out of my mind.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'll get the thing that I think was my like game of the show was definitely Rainbow Six Extraction.
Interesting.
Just because I am super down for a co-op tactical shooter using Siege's like engine. That to me is
sandbox.
Like, yeah, that is a gold mine if they can do it right. Little concerned about their monetization models, especially with the whole thing of like your operators can get captured and taken away. I like that idea in concept. I'm not entirely certain Ubisoft is going to do it without being a little scummy. Please prove me wrong, Ubisoft.
Welcome to Rainbow Six.
Exactly.
The other thing I want to shout out is Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
We're not there yet, Wyatt. There was more in that show. That's the end of the show.
Give him a chance.
Oh, I thought we were just going over the larger stuff that we were. I thought we were.
No, I'm going in order. As to the order that I can remember, because I don't have like a full list of everything here, just my notes to go off of, and there are some things I didn't write notes about because they were very boring. So if we miss a few games here, it's just because we weren't particularly interested.
Not worth talking about.
And you
or they showed
care
nothing.
about
A lot of it is we didn't see anything from a lot of these. So I do think the next things that kind of got me, Riders Republic. I think I'm the only one here who plays a lot of extreme sports games. Yeah. I think it looks fun, but I've heard some rumors about the monetization models and like they've taken a lot of free to play things in a game that's a full price game. That's concerning. So gameplay looked good, and I'll probably be picking that up on sale at some point. I don't know if I'm going to trust Ubisoft with that at release, but it's shaping up. Ubisoft and their extreme sports bloodline. Another thing that Ubisoft put out closely after that is Rocksmith Plus.
Yes.
Did this speak to any of you?
It spoke to me in that the old one sucked specifically for my purposes because I play bass and it doesn't track bass as well. So it was very frustrating to use. And I hope this one is better, but I don't care.
I used to play guitar in high school. I stopped because I sucked at it. But it's something I've always wanted to get back into. I don't know if Rocksmith Plus is really what I'm going to be using to get back into it. I have a very musically minded family, so I might just do something with that because that doesn't cost anything. But I'm sure that it's going to be sufficient for what people need it for.
Yep. So I can talk about Rocksmith a little bit because I played a decent amount of Rocksmith 2014. So for people that don't know, I picked up guitar long time ago in like middle school. We ended up having to sell it for some reason. I don't remember what it was. I think that it was just like not getting played very often because I was also in band and doing trombone at the same time. So too many instruments. But fast forward to college, I pick up a guitar again and play some Rocksmith 2014, the remastered version. I got pretty good for a decent chunk of time until having to move into dorms that were not, capable of having room to have an electric guitar and an amp. But it was a really, really good learning tool, especially for a lot of techniques that, like, it's hard to tell on your own if you're getting something right. Like, stuff like palm mutes, where, like, the difference is noticeable when you do it, but you can also just be doing it wrong and not realizing it because you think you're doing it right. And Rocksmith was really good at telling you if you were doing that. Of, like, if you were just off enough to it not being correct. Especially if you had an electric guitar and, like, the cable that plugged in. It was really good at what it was doing. So, I'm excited for Rocksmith Plus. I'm not that interested in guitar anymore. So, I probably won't go very far with it. I might pick it up for like a month or two and just mess around for a little while. But I am really happy that Rocksmith is still happening because I think it is legitimately like one of the better ways to self-teach an instrument that I've seen. Especially because like gamifying something goes a really long way with a lot of people to actually like get them motivated to practice.
Yeah.
I think that is huge. So I think a lot of people that really want to get into guitar but have trouble getting the motivation to do practice will find a lot of value out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
it seems
long
like
as
it's
the
a way
service
to
is good.
really. It seems like it's a way to set up skills really quickly.
Yeah,
You know,
it takes you from
introduce...
very little knowledge to a lot of like skills very quickly, which is nice if you're willing to put in the time. As it always is with an instrument, there's not really a shortcut you can take. Learning an instrument, you just kind of have to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
guitar. This is kind of what I ended up doing when my first time around. There's this thing where like if you know 4 or 5 chords, you know like half to 70% of every song that's ever been made. That
If you're playing rhythm
had a
guitar,
in it.
but that only works for rhythm guitar. Like that doesn't work for
Yeah.
most.
But what I'm
guitar
saying
styles.
is, it's a shortcut, but you also really shoot yourself in the foot in the long run.
Yeah,
Oh.
it can be good because it gets you motivated that you can actually like play a song, but
It gives you a lot of confidence. Right
not
off
the
bat,
best way to learn an instrument, and it doesn't
No,
translate
it's
to
not.
others.
This
So
is our music podcast.
hey, we talk about music a decent amount of the time on here. But yeah,
we all play a kind of guitar, so
and yeah, I've used Trala before, which is kind of similar for violin. And that works a lot. So I do think that there is going to be a lot of value to this to people that are interested in picking it up. If you already know how to play, I'd be a little bit iffy unless you like really want to learn a bunch of songs that you could probably learn just by reading music. But hey, maybe you like the game aspect. And yeah, I think subscription model is actually a pretty decent way to go for this kind of service. Because like the big thing with Rocksmith is if you look at the Steam page, there's like $1,000 of DLC for it.
yeah.
Well, also having it be a subscription model kind of encourages you to like keep with it, you know.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's important for an instrument that you're just kind of consistent with it. And so if you have a subscription model, I think that kind of encourages people to do that more.
Fear of missing out is like almost actually a good learning tool for an instrument.
yeah. It's threatening you to do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, you got to make a decision. Am I going to keep it or not? So yeah, I think that's going to be really cool for people that are into it. All right, moving on. Hey Wyatt.
Hey,
we're going to talk
Ryan.
about Mario and Rabbids, but first we got to say Far Cry 6 showed up and that was about it. Moving on. All right, now you can go.
Mario Rabbids. It's a weird anomaly of a game for me, and I'm talking about the original because at the time I was like, Mario, I guess he's important or whatever, not really my thing. Rabbids, I think the world would be better off without them. And also tactics games are not
Harsh.
my thing. But I loved it. I thought all 3 of those elements worked really well. I think it's a simplified tactics game for someone like me, it worked really well. I think they incorporated as much of Mario's like mechanics and world in it as they could. And I actually thought the Rabbids were pretty funny in that game because they were utilized correctly. And I'm just glad to see there's a sequel and that they're actually changing a lot. And it seems like changes that make sense and are good for that series as a whole. So I'm pretty freaking excited.
And they're doing something different. Like that's my big thing is so many of these tactics games immediately go to like grid-based combat. Like I want to see some more big budget tactics games do different things. Like give me some hex grids. Give me what this game's doing, where it's just kind of like movement ranges, and you get to actually freely move where you want to go.
Which changes things a lot. Like
Exactly.
It seems kind of small to people who don't play a lot of strategy games, but that is such a big change, and it changes so.
It's
many
very
things.
freeing, and it does like legitimately change how you think about the game. Of like, okay, I'm no longer locked to this board game kind of dimension, which can be fun. Like that board game style is really great for the games that use it right. But like Mario & Rabbids, do whatever you want.
Oh yeah,
this is a franchise that has a license to do whatever the hell and be great. So
yeah,
I'm excited to see how this turns out.
And again, I can't stress enough how shocked I was that the rabbits actually made me funny, and how I thought, or made me laugh. Excuse me. I'm very tired.
Nothing can make you funny, Wyatt.
I
Yeah.
know.
We try way
Um,
too hard here for that. So
I know. But no, I thought they were legitimately like really funny, and I thought they were used in a way where they were in the story, they were important to the story, sort of, but they weren't obnoxious. They didn't take away from what you were supposed to be, from what your attention was supposed to be on. And I thought they were utilized quite well.
all right, our last big thing, unless Brett, you have anything to say about Mario and Rabbids.
No.
All right,
Yeah.
great. Our last big announcement was that we're getting the Avatar game that has been like rumored for years. At this point, I don't even think rumored. I think we've known it's happening. We just have never seen it. So we're getting the Avatar game, and for those listening that are getting excited, it's Avatar. It's James Cameron's Avatar,
Yeah.
not Avatar: The Last Airbender. Makes me sad too. All right. Look,
All I
we
can
saw
say-
a CG trailer.
All I can say is that I'm going to go under the assumption that this is going to be a typical Ubisoft open world game until something tells me otherwise, because I think that's
But
a safe
we have been told this
assumption.
game is first person.
So, okay, Avatar Far Cry, got it. So,
Which
So,
has me
look.
concerned because Primal had some issues. Like,
so I didn't play
little
Primal, so I
worried.
can't speak to that. But as someone, and I'm kind of in the minority, as someone who likes an Ubisoft open world game, having that, I know, quiet for a moment. So having that structure in the world of Pandora, I'm kind of on board. I like that style of game. I like that structure, and I think this is a cool world that would lend itself well to a video game. And yeah, that makes sense.
especially an open world
I'm
game.
kinda down.
Avatar is one of those few properties that does lend itself really well to open world with the exploration of the original movie and everything.
I
My
mean,
biggest
I
concern
rewatched-
is that Ubisoft is not going to do it justice. That's like the biggest
No.
worry, is that they're just not going to get very much right. Which
It's hard to say. It's hard to
we
say with
can't
Ubisoft.
say anything about that because like Ubisoft has this habit of hitting relatively common like 7 out of 10, but occasionally they get something really right or really wrong. And I have
it's a
this gut
complete-
feeling that Avatar is going to be on one of those two.
They are like the roulette, the Russian roulette of video. You just don't know what's coming out of that chamber. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying?
Oh
Like
my
it is
God.
so. It's like the RNGesus of video game developers. You just have no idea what you're gonna get. It's kind of an anomaly.
It is Massive though, and Massive has a good track record. So
Yes. I
that
think
makes me a little bit
Division
more
2
happy than some of the other things because Massive is a studio at Ubisoft I trust a little bit more.
Division 2, I thought was really good. I actually prefer it over Destiny personally, although that shouldn't come as a shock to most anyone that listens to our show. And look, even if it doesn't come out amazingly, which is an Ubisoft game, so take that for what you will. They do also have a good track record of keeping up with their releases post-launch. They do have a good record
Yeah.
of that as well.
This
So
is true.
I don't know. I mean, it's Massive, so that gives me more hope, but we'll see. No gameplay or nothing. So yeah.
All right. So you know what else happened on Monday? We got Gearbox.
Who's that?
And
what have they
after
worked on?
that,
So Gearbox, look, we're not going to talk about Gearbox in this. I'm sure we're going to have a lengthy discussion about Gearbox next week.
oh boy.
The big takeaway of Gearbox this year was that they had nothing to show. They had Tiny Tina's Wonderland, the game, the new Borderlands spinoff, except they showed no gameplay. It got announced at the Summer Game Fest kickoff, not at their own show. So by the time that they got to that, it was just Randy, to Gearbox's presentation, it was Randy Pitchford walking around a movie set of people who clearly didn't want to talk to him, being forced to
Look-
talk to him.
Everyone looked visibly annoyed at his presence.
Yeah.
I don't even know how else to describe it. No one wanted him there.
It was so out of touch. Like, man, we're moving on.
Yep.
hmm
Speaking
Let's
of
not get
something
started.
Brett thinks is out of touch, Devolver Digital
Mm-hmm.
had a Devolver forwarder.
It's the Max Pass Plus event, actually.
Look,
is its official
Premium
title.
purchase.
Brett, I give us your thoughts first, so that Wyatt and I can end on a high note.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Devolver is funny sometimes, but this time I didn't think they were funny at all of the time. And it was really annoying because it was like 10 15 minutes of just like what if we just said really like complicated words strung one after another and like made fun of the games industry and then just like walked towards the camera as things exploded in the background. That's funny, right? And then it wasn't, and then they would show a game and I'd be like, okay. And they only showed like 5 or something. And I was like, well, I wish they spent more time showing me games instead of making fun of things. And then they did the thing at the end where like we're gonna have this game only buyable in physical form, and I was like, okay, this is another joke, right? And then
It wasn't
it
a
isn't.
joke, and it
They're
sold
just
out
actually
immediately.
it's yeah. So like, what you literally just did the exact thing that you were like making fun of doing, and I don't understand that, and this was just very stupid. I did not find it enjoyable at all.
Look, I will agree with the last point. I think it's Devil's Third or something. Weird looking game. It's not Devil's Third. That's a terrible game. But
Demon Throttle.
Demon Throttle.
Demon Throttle. There we go.
It actually looks kind of fun, except now there is just no way to play it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
these devs put in some hard work, and now you just can't.
I wouldn't be
Like
too
this.
surprised if they let the joke go on for a tiny bit longer and then just release it normally.
Yeah.
To like, okay,
Well,
let's
the
end
thing
the
is,
joke
the
and
game's
actually
not
release
done
this.
yet. It's not done until 2022. So you're pre-ordering this physical copy of a game that is only physical. Oh, all right. Moving on from that point, I do think I agree with Brett that I think Devolver is funny sometimes, and this time I thought they were more funny than not funny.
Last
At least
year,
to my sense of humor. Last year was a little rough.
it was hard to watch last year.
They got a little too high-minded.
Yeah. They went a little too hard. Is like the best way to describe it. Because I'm with you guys in that I think sometimes they're on point. I think their first couple of showings were like amazing, and
Like,
I loved
the
them.
first Devolver show is still like one of those E3 moments where you're just like, huh? Like,
I
how
thought it
did
was
this
real.
happen?
It took way too long for me to realize that it was all a joke. I'm going to be real with you. I was an idiot and I didn't get it at first. But that just made me like it even more.
Yeah.
I think this year, I don't think it's like their funniest show they've ever had. Again, I think that first year, those first 2 years were great, but it was definitely a lot funnier. And I think they were a lot more to the point this year than they were last year, which is the big thing.
And what
'cause
really
they
helped this year is every game they showed looked really fun.
They started off with Shadow Warrior 3, which just looks better and better every time they show it off. I am so excited for that game. It looks just awesome.
Yeah, Shadow Warrior looks great. I think for me, definitely Inscription
Back to
stood
Yumi
out.
looked really interesting
Oh yeah.
as well.
So everything they showed looked really good. I would recommend checking out the games at least from that showcase. They're all indies aside from Shadow Warrior 3, but they all look
Wizard
really
with a gun.
interesting. Wizard with a Gun
Wizard
is still
with a
my
Gun,
favorite
yeah.
game title I think I've ever heard. It's to the point. But
And even Demon Throttle, the whole thing started off with that demon kissed my wife or something.
it's great.
That's
Like
great.
everything they showed looked really fun.
Even if
that's
they
that's
don't
rare,
have-
even for Devolver.
Yeah, even if they don't have, I usually think in the games department, even if they're not funny, they usually have every year they've had a couple of cool things to show off. Like I don't think they've ever
But
had.
usually
a
they
year,
have one or two like things that just don't look that good.
Yeah, but
This
I
year,
would
like
say
all of it looked good.
I would say they're more consistent in terms of like the good stuff that they show off
Absolutely.
than others. But obviously there's some duds.
Devolver knows how to pick them.
Excuse me, here and there. Oh yeah, it's quickly becoming, I feel like, a stamp of approval, a stamp of quality. Just because most things they produce are just so good, or publish,
Yeah.
I should say, are so good.
And I do think the big thing that helped this year is, at least to Wyatt and I know Brett, you're a little sourpuss in your corner. So at least to Wyatt and I think this year they put a lot of production value into the jokes they were doing.
Nina
they-
Struthers
they
getting
knew-
her sleeves torn off and carried around by
Yeah.
Jason Momoa is awesome.
And
I
they
don't
also
care
knew
what
when to
Brett
cut
has
it.
to say.
Like the
Yes.
big thing with this one is last year really felt like it kept going for so long, despite I think being shorter than this year.
Which just speaks to like the efficiency of this year. You know, it felt shorter, even if it.
They were cap-ending jokes with games, and they kept going. Like it wasn't things that were repeated didn't get repeated too much, aside from that like one shot where they did the same walk like 8 times. That was the only bit I thought they repeated too much, but the rest of it I think went over pretty well.
Yeah,
Alright.
and anytime that they do like the subscription it's like they start off with their whole like, oh, this is a monetized subscription service thingy. They like pack all of the like worst parts of AAA developers into one package. I think those are funny personally.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right, moving on. Day 2 of E3, we got some looks at Microsoft and Bethesda. Square Enix had a few things. There was a Back for Blood presentation. That's about it.
Mhm.
Well, I think
That
we
was
saw some more
jokingly called.
indies too. Maybe was that? Nope. Looking at my notes, that was a different day. Ignore me. So we started off with Xbox and Bethesda. Xbox and Bethesda, I think we can all agree, put on a high quality show. They got a lot of good stuff.
I would
going.
say second best of E3.
We're
thought it was
saving the
gonna be
ranking.
first.
We're saving the rankings for next week, Wyatt. Don't give away your positions
Oh,
yet.
darn it. Cat's out of the bag.
But yeah, they showed a lot of cool stuff. And I think the biggest thing with Microsoft and Bethesda is people would come out and talk for a little while, and then they would stop talking, and then gameplay
It had a good
Mhm.
pace
for
to it,
like
for sure.
20 minutes.
They had dates for a lot as well,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah.
They were more concrete about releases, which isn't something you normally get, especially with new
Also,
releases.
Constantly
announcements.
hammering home day one Game Pass.
Yes,
Consistently.
that little Game Pass logo is the winner of E3 in my opinion. Every time I saw
I
that,
agree.
every
Yep.
time I saw that little
100%.
badge, I was so happy.
Yeah. So everything they showed looked really good. We're gonna go over a few highlights. There's a lot in that show. You can go watch our full reaction to that to see what we thought about everything. But I think the major highlights: Forza 5, Horizon 5, looked really good.
Yeah,
We were-
visually that was like breathtakingly impressive.
We were swooning. Ryan and I were
Yeah.
swooning over that the entire time.
Fable
they were
4
showing
looks
it.
great.
It's
Fable
gonna
4
look great. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Forza 5 looks really good. We saw a wonderfully done Outer Worlds 2 trailer.
That was great. It felt like something that would be at a Devolver conference, which is
Yep.
great. Like if it would fit in right in with that. But it's very on brand for that franchise as well.
Yes.
Love the first game. Haven't played the DLC, but I'm looking forward to it, of course. So,
Definitely. Then, well, actually before this, but I'm putting it after the Outer Worlds presentation because the Outer Worlds presentation perfectly described what happens
Mhm.
in this trailer, and that is the
Mhm.
Starfield showcase, which I think was the funniest reveal to me, because this is a game that's been hyped up for about 2 years at this point, and they still have shown nothing. Like we see the CG trailer now. We get a little more things. We get them confirming it's a sci-fi RPG. I just
which we
want to
all
see.
secretly knew.
I just want to
Who
see
would've
what this
thought?
game is. I just want to know, what do we do in Starfield? Just answer that question for me, and then I'll be in. Bethesda, please.
My
No.
thing is, it's a Bethesda game, which means it's probably going to be Fallout in space. There is nothing that I've seen that makes
But
me
Wyatt,
think
even
otherwise.
then, though, Fallout in space means nothing to me when we've seen them on like a moon. Like, what is happening? How do we move? I'm so confused as to what this game is, and I just want to know. That's all I want. All right.
Are you all right, Ryan? do you need a minute? Do we
Look, I'm normally a little bit more positive in Bethesda games than a lot of people, just because I think like there's a lot to be said for creating an ocean with the depth of a paddling pool. It's not all just like that. That isn't just a wholly negative phrase, because I do think like there's so much stuff to do in Skyrim that if you're enjoying that base loop, you have so many things to do. Starfield, I just want to know, like, I love space games, but there are so many differences in every space game because how you handle, like, travel and a world map and all that just changes how the game feels on a very direct level. So, like, is this going to be in Outer Worlds where we're going to, like, a couple of different locations and we're not really flying around in space, or are we going to see, like, full space flight? Like, what is happening, Bethesda?
I think
Mario Galaxy.
I think the most positive takeaway from that trailer that Ryan and I had, because I remember us pointing this out, is we're a fan of like industrial space,
Yeah.
right? So think like Alien and Aliens is very like
Hard sci-fi.
industrialized
where it's
space,
going.
yeah. And so that this definitely
It
seems
has that,
that's
like,
where it's
expanse type look of, like, this looks like things that could feasibly happen in the future.
Yes.
going. Yeah,
Um,
and I'm a
which
fan
I
of that
love those
look,
designs.
and I like that direction because I kind of want to see more of that, because I feel like with a lot of sci-fi games we've gotten recently, it gets very fantastical, it gets very over the top.
I just want
and
to
so
see
it's
more.
nice to see-
I want to see more sci-fi RPG. We haven't gotten a sci-fi game in so long. Why?
I mean, Outer Worlds is a sci-fi RPG, but
I don't.
more.
I want to see sci-fi where we are in the ship piloting it somewhere. That is what I want to see. I want
fair.
something to have space flight that is actually there. It can be as arcadey as you want. I don't
That's
need
fair.
sim flight, but I want something to take advantage of the fact that it's in space. All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
So to save Ryan from this crisis, I do also want to point out that they showed off a bit of Stalker 2.
Well, okay.
Just
There is
to
one other
save
thing.
Ryan.
There's one other thing with Starfield I do want to mention because I think it's really funny.
Okay.
So Todd Howard came out and opened the Xbox showcase, which surprised all of us. It was a good opener. Todd Howard's a very good speaker when he's not having to apologize for things,
Or just lying.
or just
lying.
blatantly lying. The Peter Molyneux take. What I loved is that he came out and then got everyone ready for the Starfield trailer. When the Starfield trailer cut away, he was no longer there. And a different person was talking.
He
I
vanished.
think it was Pete Hines, I think.
No, it wasn't Pete Hines. It was a woman.
wasn't?
I'm forgetting her name with the yellow
Oh.
shirt. And
Oh.
she talked about the game a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So
Her.
I'm a little bit worried that I think legitimately what happened is Todd Howard was acting like there was a crowd there and was worried about the reaction of them not showing gameplay, and so he retreated to his hidey hole. To the trailer.
There was also
activated
probably
his,
a mandate. There's probably a mandate where he couldn't say the number 16 anywhere in that
Yes.
Yeah.
entire
Mhm.
presentation.
He activated his chameleon-esque defense mechanism to appear like a completely different human being to take all the blame off of him in case of
He had to
Alright.
use some
In
of
case of
his,
anything going
his
So
wrong.
we
his
do have
godlike
more
abilities.
shows to talk about, and we did talk about Xbox a little bit on the last episode of the show because it was there.
Mhm.
So basically, the other highlights we talked about Infinite before. It's looking a lot better. Like-
I think that was Brett's like biggest surprise
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
E3. If I could
Definitely
go
mine.
out on a limb.
You're correct.
I always had faith in this game, so I'm pretty happy to see that other people are on board now.
We saw Stalker 2, which is also shaping up very well. Again, no
Mhm.
UI. It's hard to tell with Stalker if that's just going to be how it looks, because the other Stalker games are pretty minimal. It
Mhm.
could just be that you don't have UI unless you have your gun like aimed down sights.
I'm assuming if there was UI, it's probably very minimal anyway, so we're probably not missing
The
too
biggest
much.
thing I want to know is how much of that gameplay was like dev magic and how much of it was actual gameplay.
Yeah.
That's my biggest question, because that game is still a little ways off, so I don't think they're as far along as they looked. But it did show well. We got an announcement of a new Plague Tale, and then we saw the big blowout at the end of Redfall being Arcane's newest Xbox exclusive thing. Looks
Not
good.
entirely sure what it is.
Well, we know the words "open world immersive sim" were said.
Right.
So we know something, and we know this game is likely going to be co-op in some measure. I believe they did say it was going to be single player or co-op, just kind of up to you
Mhm.
to pick how you want to play. I like that it's set in Massachusetts. I like my vampire stories. Arcane making immersive sims is just like, it's like Bethesda making weird RPGs, you know, first-person RPGs. I just want to see more of it, even if they're not always great. I just want to see more. So I think Redfall is probably going to be fun when it comes out. I'm also betting this was probably a pretty early production trailer because the acquisition didn't happen that long ago, and this is probably a game that like Xbox contracted them to make, essentially, of like they wanted Arcane to make a new.
Is it, or was
IP.
it so early on that no one would be disappointed if it was a Microsoft exclusive anyway, because no one had heard of it?
Well, either way, there's no difference because it's early in production, right? Like this is a game I don't think we're gonna see any gameplay of, at least until next E3. Could be proven wrong, but I don't think we're gonna see gameplay for a little while. I'm hoping it does look good when it comes out. Yeah, that's the Microsoft show. I think
there's a couple of surprises that I did want to.
All right, go through quickly, Wyatt. We gotta move the pace.
The Sea of Thieves, Pirates of the Caribbean crossover was a huge surprise.
We talked about that on the last episode.
Yeah. Right, but both Ryan and I were excited to see that surprise Battlefield gameplay, which looked awesome, and
it did look very good.
Very excited for Psychonauts 2. People who are fans of Psychonauts,
hey, it's still happening.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are. It's not my thing. I want to talk about Slime Rancher real quick. I love the first game. I don't know what a Slime Rancher 2 is going to look like. I'm
first
hoping
game, but
more base building stuff. But that was great, and I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. So
all right, great.
Yeah.
So we also got
again the Xbox mini fridge. Mwah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
perfect.
Let's move on.
We also got a Square Enix conference, and this is another one of the ones that probably going to be the middle of the card in terms of like what we enjoyed this E3. Just because they talked about a few things that weren't that interesting, but they also hit us with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is looking far better than Avengers ever did.
Yeah. Like I want to play that game right now, and I haven't felt that way,
dude. And they talked about something. We talked about this game a little bit at the last episode, and that we thought it looked good. One thing I specifically want to call out is they talked more recently about the devs went on about how the music stuff interacts with the game, and you have this ability in combat where like you can call your team in to huddle up, and like if you're doing poorly in the fight, you have to give a different pep talk than you would give if you're doing well. And then the music starts jamming, and then Star-Lord gets a buff and everything. And if you did the speech right, everyone gets a buff. And I'm like, that's a fun little combat minigame.
It is cool.
I'm concerned it could get old, but at the same time, like, I saw the same animation like 100 times in Yakuza of someone getting their face smashed into a wall, and it was great every time. So I don't think it's going to bother me. Yeah, looks a lot of fun. Still want to see more of it because they said a lot of things about it being a good single-player RPG, and you say those words, I get concerned, Square Enix, because you haven't had a great track record with those.
I do want to commend them for how much they showed off for revealing a game for the first time. There was a CG trailer. They had devs talking about it. They had straight-up gameplay with UI, like unbroken gameplay and everything.
This is how I want to see game reveals happen. Like,
if it's really early on, and all you have to show us is a PNG of some mountains and a couple of stars, just don't bother. Show us when you've got something to actually show.
I mean, there are cases where I think you can do that, of like a game needs to be confirmed as in development for a studio. Like, people are just chomping at it to know that there will be a next thing in that franchise.
The only reason for me, it's like, it's okay if it's a sequel, so we have some comprehension of what to expect because of the previous game. Yeah. If it's a new IP, right, brand new franchise, and you're just like, oh, this is in development, it's like, what is that? What's going on?
I don't know that I should care yet.
But if you're going to announce like, oh, here's the next Call of Duty, and it's like a little teaser, it's like, yeah, we know what to expect. It's the next Call of Duty. Got it. Like, I don't know. If it's a new IP, it's frustrating.
All right, Brett. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that the shows can be 2 hours if it's 2 hours of 15-minute clips of games actually being shown, like Guardians of the Galaxy was, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That's it.
Square Enix showed some other stuff. A lot of it we talked about before, and it wasn't that interesting. But I think the biggest confusing thing here is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin showed a trailer that we all in the last episode talked about just being kind of disappointing because it didn't look like it was consistently put together, and so many voice lines in that thing were just, I want to kill chaos.
Chaos.
I am chaos. Come on, Square Enix, just put a good trailer together, please. You know how to do it. And if you're gonna put a good trailer together, do it for your new Final Fantasy action game. People want that. Like,
And the worst part is that like the game is good. The game is pretty like actually good. Like according to the
Brett,
demo
how do we
of
know
the
that?
game.
How do we know that,
Oh,
Brett?
people were able to play the demo now? Is that a thing?
Yes, as of a few days ago, after the demo being broken for like 2 days and crashing upon loading it, you can now play the demo.
Wow, I'm
And
so proud of them.
the most confusing part to me of all of this is that like that how many memes have you guys seen of the guys just like standing there and like they're edited onto like the Weezer album cover
Yep.
of them just like sitting there in their jeans and
Yep.
t-shirts. I was like, that just seems like this is a Final Fantasy game. Why do they look like that? Even the people in 15 look more interesting. Yeah, no, duh. That you could change their friggin' clothes. Like, why wouldn't you show that, or at least like put it in like
Put them in a cool outfit. Like,
exactly show them how cool the character customization is. None of that was in the trailer.
so many decisions
None of the
made for
fact-
that trailer are so confusing.
It must
just,
have
like,
been slapped
baffles me.
together. It must have been slapped together.
It's a
last
trailer from
minute.
January.
That's what it feels. And we're not even pointing that at Halo this time. It's shocking.
I know.
It's so weird. But yeah, impressions from the demo that is out for Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins are that the gameplay is really interesting. Like, there's tons of cool like magic abilities you can use. There's a whole job system, and I love me some action job systems, especially when you can be a dragoon and also use a greatsword at the same time. Like,
Yes,
that sounds great.
and you can with one press of a button in the middle of like a 45 hit combo, you can switch between all of your jobs and add their moves to the combo. But you wouldn't know
Because that trailer
because it wasn't in the trailer. It's so stupid.
This is so confusing because that is a game that like was primed for E3 because we knew it was happening beforehand. It'd
Yeah.
been so heavily rumored. People were super excited for this. Team Ninja's got a great track record. They don't put out trash. And this game shows up and just looks like a weird asset flip almost of
Mhm.
Neo. It looks like an asset flip of Neo. And it's so confusing. All right. We need to move on before Brett and I have a convention.
So what you're saying is to calm you down and not frustrate you even more, we can talk about the Final Fantasy Battle Royale.
Look, I'm not gonna knock it because it kind of looks fun. I just don't like that it's on mobile only. Like, that's the thing that gets me. It's a mobile one. I just don't get it. I don't get Square Enix's logic on that. All right,
I get their logic on a lot of things.
moving on to the day 3. There were a whole bunch of indie presentations that showed a lot of really cool stuff. The indies, we just don't have time to cover all of them, so I'm gonna call out a few good ones. You guys call out a few ones that you really liked. The way I'm gonna direct people to right now is if you have a PC that can play games, check out the Steam Next Fest that's going on.
Yes.
Almost all of these games that were shown have demos available, and they're really fun, all of them. So
Yep.
check that out. You're gonna find some great indies that are popping up there. One of the fun ones I found was West Stride, I believe it is, which is like a black and white turn-based mech fighting game. Oof.
Yeah.
So good. So tons of stuff that I think is going to appeal to a lot of people. Check that out if you want to get your indie fix. All right. Any standout indies that you two want to shout out while we're in this indie talk section?
We got there was one that looked cool to me, called Sacrifier. It doesn't have a demo yet because it's coming out in 2022, but it just looks like it looks like a not cheaply made classic JRPG type game, because I feel like a lot of those in the indie space they kind of look like mobile games sometimes because they're just trying to go for the small SNES aesthetic. This one did not look like that, and it looks very involved, and that's stuck out to me as being interesting.
All right. Wyatt, you got anything?
I did, and then I
Well,
forgot.
while you're confused, I'm
I
gonna say
lost it.
I'm gonna say the name Replaced again. I talked about this one last time, but
Mhm.
Replaced looked really good. Cool pixel art RPG or pixel art, not RPG, pixel art action thing. All right, moving on to the actual shows that happened that we were talking about. Day 3 was the one day I don't think we actually showed anything on this day because there was really nothing of note. There
No.
was Take-Two, which was like one of those situations we put them on our tier list, but it feels mean even including them. Like it's the same situation with Gearbox of like, why were you here? What was the point of this?
And
It's more mean
they-
to remove them from the tier list than to keep them on there. Let's put it that way.
It's
Or
just
But, like,
confusing.
reverse of what I just said. Oh my god, I'm so tired.
Because you
Like,
can't
this-
compare
it
them
shouldn't have
to the other
been.
things.
It shouldn't have been a press conference that was listed as like a.
No.
A lot of these really felt like investor events that should not have been included in like the
Yeah.
public watch lists of E3. I think that's where a lot of this disappointment's coming from. Capcom did a presentation. This is like a step up from the ones that are just investor conferences, basically, because they did show a lot of interesting stuff. It was just all about games we already knew about.
Yeah.
I think the big thing that was felt here is like the absence of any announcements was the big thing. Of like Capcom just didn't have anything new to show. Like everything they showed looked really good. Resident Evil is getting DLC. Monster Hunter stuff looks great as always. There's some esports stuff with Street Fighter V, and it wasn't a super long showcase, so it didn't feel like they wasted time. But it did just kind of have nothing of note to anyone that isn't like a Monster Hunter fan. So, all right, moving on from Capcom. Lots of indie streams that we already talked about. And then that's basically it for that day.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah.
It was pretty chill.
Day 3 was it was a nice break from the E3 hype. We got to relax for a day and kind of just leisurely watch some presentations that were mildly disappointing.
They had nothing in them.
All right. Now, Day 4. Day 4 is interesting because this is the one where Nintendo is basically closing out the show. Nintendo tends to have this track record of directs where either you watch like a 40-minute direct and just kind of at the end of it you're like, did this really need to happen? Or you see a Nintendo direct that you're like, every single thing I saw I want right now and I want to play it. And then they add on the fact that everything is coming within like the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Nintendo has done it again, everyone. They've pulled a top tier E3 conference. I mean, the only thing I think you could be disappointed with this conference, or this Nintendo Direct, is that there weren't a lot of like brand new games shown in franchises that were shown.
I want to get
a lot of
my
remakes.
I want to get my biggest disappointment.
Go
out
ahead.
of the way. There was no Zelda collection of
Yeah.
any description, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I would have preferred to have seen something like that instead of more Breath of the Wild 2. That's probably going to be kind of a hot take.
Yeah, heavy
I
disagree,
would've-
but
But
I
that's
agree
also
with you,
coming.
Wyatt.
That's coming from someone that, since playing Breath of the Wild, I'm interested in this series, and I don't have the hardware to really explore it more.
Yeah.
So for me personally, some kind of collection of some of the like GameCube, like Wii era Zelda games would be great because it's a series I want to get into more, and I don't because it's a really difficult series to get into just because of the hardware.
definitely.
And so that, because like, look, Breath of the Wild 2, probably going to like it, and it's coming to a platform I already have. I want to know about the things that I don't have access to, that I don't know I have access to, you know? So that's my biggest disappointment. But they certainly made up in other areas, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think biggest thing with this direct that people were disappointed in is just that there wasn't a ton of like new things that were new games. We saw a lot of surprises, but most of them were things that we've seen like 20 years ago in a different form.
Hey, I'm
But-
not complaining.
I think for us here that really doesn't matter because
No.
it is a lot of franchises that haven't been seen in a long time getting the credit that they deserve and like a new place to shine. and like we're hitting the point of like the Switch is a super popular console with a lot of young people, and I don't mean like high schoolers and one. I mean like children. It's a perfect
Yeah.
console for younger children. And a lot of these older games are games that we grew up with, stuff like Advance Wars and Metroid and
You said
Super
it.
Monkey Ball. And now new people are going to get to experience that. So with that, let's go into the actual announcements of what happened at this Nintendo Direct showcase. I'm just going to say this is a free-for-all. One of you two pick a game you want to talk about first. We got a lot of them.
Brett, you go
Metroid.
first.
Brett, I want to ask you what
Dread.
you felt. What you felt the moment you saw Samus, and then the screen fades to black, and Metroid pops on screen, and then a little number pops up
Mhm.
next to that
Mhm.
word, the number 5.
You know, like the MS Paint drawing that people use to make fun of like Redditors of
Yeah.
like the guy going like, "Oh," that was I was pretty much that. But in real life, so I became the thing I set out to destroy when they showed me Samus, and it wasn't followed by the words Fortnite. Um, it just looks like another Metroid game. It's incredible. They didn't do anything stupid. They didn't try to be like, oh, but it's the exclusive for 1 millisecond, and you can it's only like it's a battle royale. No, it's just
It's just Metroid.
another
Where's
Metroid
my
game.
Federation Force 2?
Now, I want to give a special shout out to Metroid Dread, because Brett, do you know the story of Metroid Dread?
This was a game that was leaked like
It
forever
was
ago, like
leaked in
2005,
Metroid
right?
Prime 2. Metroid Prime 2 had a hidden reference to a Metroid Dread that people kind of ran with, and nobody knew if this was a game. Like, it wasn't clear that this would be a game or anything. It was just kind of a rumor that floated around for a long time about Metroid Dread being a thing that would happen. Now, I want to know if this was originally the name of this game, or if Nintendo like latched on to those
Yeah.
and like named the game after it. Because either way, that's really cool. But this is just like one of those super rare situations where a game is like floating in the ether for so long with no announcement. Like, Nintendo never said they were working on this.
Oh no.
No one knew anything. It's not like this game was in development hell or something. It just didn't exist. And then they come out swinging at this E3 with Metroid Dread.
Well, I would like to mention at the end of that entire showcase, it was a swing. But right at the start, it was a swing and a miss because that little opening cinematic looked awful.
The lighting. We talked
the
about
lighting
this.
was awful,
And
it
the sound, Wyatt. The sound.
yes, or the lack of sound in some instances.
Well, it
of
was
that
like the delay of a
opening.
second to all the sounds in that
Yep.
opening bit.
Yeah.
And Wyatt and I watching this were like, what is happening? Is this like the internet? And then we were like, no, we're both having this at the same time in different areas of the country. So this has got to be
Pain.
baked into the Direct. And I looked at the thing. It is baked into the Direct like that.
Such a shame.
Yep. And the other weird thing, I'm just going to point it out too. They called it Metroid 5 and then they called it Metroid Dread. And it's not Metroid 5 Dread, it's just Metroid Dread.
Well, because Metroid's never been numbered. I think the
Yeah.
big thing is that was their way of saying this is a new mainline like
Mainline,
Metroid.
yeah.
This is
I
not a
find it-
spin-off. This is not some
I get
side
that.
thing. This is the new game.
I get that, but I also find it kind of confusing and strange. Just call it Dread and then have the gameplay basically show that it's like a mainline entry.
Dude,
I don't know.
I disagree. I think the
It's very
games
odd.
industry has proven in the last like 3 years that we cannot trust anything they show unless they
Yeah.
explicitly state it. I think that was
And
Nintendo's way
also-
of explicitly stating.
We're like at the point where like it's more than a legitimately probable thing that you just have a majority of people there that just have not played a Metroid game before. They don't know what order things are in. This is the 5th one and it's brand new. It's called Metroid Dread. There you go.
And also, for anyone wondering,
Call it
Metroid
Metroid 5 Dread.
is a
Whatever.
very standalone thing. You don't need to play all the Metroid games to understand what's
No.
going on in Metroid.
No.
All you need to know, Samus shoots the bad things. There you go. That's it. That's all you need to know.
And
All right.
she transforms into a ball.
So moving on.
Because as we all know, Metroid can't crouch. Anyway.
Before we continue the free for all, I want to get the announcements that I think we're all a little bit lukewarm on, or just not as interested in. None of us are huge Smash players. We play Smash casually, but aren't like competitive Smashers.
To me, it's a party game more so than it is a huge competitive thing.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. They announced Kazuya from Tekken is joining the Smash roster. I'm a fan of this announcement because I like Tekken a lot. It is a very interesting choice of rep. I probably would have gone for Heihachi or Jin, but Kazuya is going to be fun. I think he looks like a great character, and that trailer was peak comedy.
Was awesome.
Yes,
it was
yes.
so good.
Especially, I think, for people who don't have a huge attachment to Tekken, I think that did a good job of selling the character.
Yeah.
So yeah, great announcement trailer. There's another presentation happening in a few days after this podcast to see what he plays like, and he's probably going to come out like the day or two after that. So he's coming up soon. We're getting the Life is Strange collection, the remastered collection, and the new game coming to Switch. Now, is it just me, or was this announcement super weird? Because they started with like this anime art style,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, "Wait, is this like a new thing?" And then it was just an announcement for a collection. I'm just confused.
All I know is that instead of 2 games on their own that have bad writing, we're getting a bunch of bad writing all smashed into one. I
Wyatt,
can't wait.
Hey, if you enjoy Life is Strange, don't let Wyatt shame you.
Nope, not at
You
all.
can let me shame you though if you want,
Look,
but only
look.
if you want.
I've always said this: like what you like. You know, I'm just gonna end it there.
We don't need to keep going at it. I'm gonna say I am excited to play Life is Strange probably again on the Switch because I think the Switch is a really good platform for it. That's a great game that doesn't require like fast reactions to play on the go. So that's exciting to me, and I think the writing is like bad because it's teenagers and people can't write teenagers, which isn't to excuse it, but it is to me. It makes it a little bit less forgivable because I don't care as much. Like, if that makes sense, it just doesn't.
I could argue about this for hours.
We can't.
So long as I'm enjoying the game, I don't really care if it's written that well. In Life is Strange's case, because like it's not expensive. I think I got the game for like $5, and it was a fun like 7 or 8 hours of shenanigans happening on screen with weird time travel things. So I was happy with what I got. I'll put it that way. All right, moving on to our other lower card announcements. We got this big Zelda thing happening. It's called Age of Calamity Expansion Pass. All right, moving on.
Lower card.
Danganronpa is coming to Nintendo Switch. This is a little bit cool because it's everything. And the Danganronpa games have been kind of notoriously hard to collect somewhere, just because they're a little confusing and they tend to not tell you which games are the important ones and whatnot. So this is just a collection of all the important ones tossed on the Switch with like a bonus game that they expanded from one of them. It sounds cool. I'm a big fan of Danganronpa 1. Haven't played the others, so I might pick that up. We got a Fatal Frame port of, I think, the Wii U Fatal Frame.
Yes.
This definitely looked... I think this is going to be a good platform for it, just because Fatal Frame's a great like horror franchise that does weird little things. And no one plays them because they're on weird platforms. So hopefully some people play this, although it does definitely look a little dated. I think that's the biggest takeaway from it that I had.
It is also a Switch port, so
Yep.
I'm not super upset about it.
Yeah.
And we're getting Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, a cloud version coming to Switch. That was confirmed afterwards. It is a cloud-based game for Switch, not a Switch Pro stealth announcement. We got more looks.
Yeah.
What were you going on, Brett? Brett.
Well, jeez.
Look.
I didn't. I was agreeing. Well, not agreeing, but accidentally agreeing because we said at the same time with Wyatt that it was weird that there wasn't a Switch Pro announcement.
I was 100% expecting there to be something.
Yeah, I mean, they explicitly stated like a week ago before their thing that there would not be hardware at the show.
But they've led us astray a lot.
Exactly, but I think that is our fault for thinking that they were lying to us, and not their fault for setting expectations incorrectly.
No, yeah. I just think it's weird because it's like there's so many games that like we could be like, oh yeah, this like runs a little weird now, but like I mean, the Switch Pro is coming out soon, so it makes sense that it got released on this first. But
Yeah.
it's just weird that it's still there's no official word at all.
We know Nintendo is producing something akin to a Switch Pro. We've kind of known that for like 4 years at this point, but production has just been like rumored to actually have started. So I'm betting if we see a Switch Pro announcement, we're gonna see it probably a month or two out from release. I don't think they're gonna hold it out for very long, and I'm betting they're waiting to build up a backlog of hardware to ship out to people because of like the infamously terrible launches of the PS5 and Xbox Series X. I think they want to have enough that people can actually get their hands on it relatively reliably at launch, which is hard to do with the whole microchip shortage and everything. So, all right, we saw Just Dance. Yeah, Doom Eternal DLC is launching on the Switch. Strange Brigade is coming to Switch with a horde zombie shooter. 2 Point Campus, the 2 Point management game, is getting ported to Switch. That's pretty much the last of the low card announcements. Well, Mario Golf Super Rush coming out. We knew that already, but I think we don't really need to talk much about that game because Mario Golf. If you're into Mario Golf, you're gonna like it.
Yeah,
Looks fun. All right, Monster Hunter Stories 2 also coming to Switch. Again, looks very fun as someone who's into that franchise. Moving on to the big hitters.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room? The tank-sized elephant in the room, Ryan. Maybe.
I want to
save it for later.
I want to give Nintendo some credit for coming out swinging with a lot of ports that people I think were not expecting to ever happen. All right,
Yeah.
We'll move on to the tank in the room in a moment. I want to give special shout outs to Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania.
Super Mario Ball.
I'd play that game. Super
That's a
Monkey Ball
crossover right there. That's a
Banana Mania.
crossover right there.
So Banana Blitz HD released last year and was like a collection of, not even a collection, a remastered version of the worst game in the Monkey Ball franchise.
Good.
Which is so confusing because Monkey Ball's not done anything for like 10 years at that point. We're finally getting the good games bundled into a collection. It's a 1, 2, and Deluxe, which has more levels. So you're getting a huge collection of Monkey Ball games. They look great running in the new hardware. So that looks really good. But there's not a whole lot else to say about it because it's Super Monkey Ball.
It's in the
It's
name.
a simple game. It's just Super Monkey Ball. We're getting WarioWare, which I'm lumping this one in with the remakes because WarioWare is not a franchise that I think you expect anything different from. This is going to be a WarioWare game. It looks like a WarioWare game is happening. That's another surprising announcement because the last one was it came out recently, but it was a collection of minigames and it released only on the 3DS after the Switch was out. So one of those weird positions of like, this is just bad timing for the game. But this new one looks like it'll be fun. I want to see more gameplay because they showed a lot of like controlling these weird 3D characters. I want to see some classic Wario minigames of like things that are just wild and don't have weird 3D characters on screen. But we'll see. Okay, Wyatt, it's your turn. Take it away.
So the game of show for me was Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp.
There you go. Full title. Reboot Camp.
Yep. If you saw our live stream reactions, I was speechless for
all of us that were watching it broke.
Yep. I had to leave the room after the announcement because they released some whatever.
They went to Age of Calamity DLC.
Yeah, thank you. So I was like, okay, I need a minute here.
They knew that people would need a minute after seeing.
So I love Advance Wars. It's everyone as a kid growing up has that game that they always went to, right? Where it's like this game was always there for me for whatever was going on in my life, and it was like it was like a weird support thing for you, right? Everyone has that one game. Advance Wars was that for me. I love this game. I love especially the second one. It's the game that by far I played the most on my Game Boy. My Game Boy was essentially a Advance Wars machine. I played almost nothing else on it of note. Um, and I for a long time wanted the series to come back. I wanted them to make more. Because I feel like it's a series that you could really add things to and make it interesting and keep it going. But then over time, I was just convinced that they had completely forgotten what Advance Wars was, and they would never bring it back.
Fire Emblem's making too much money.
Look, I get it. Fire Emblem fans, y'all love your Fire Emblem stuff. I get it. I'm happy for you. God bless. But I wanted more Advance Wars in my life, and I never got it. And until now, I was convinced I would never see another mainline entry or a remaster or anything in my life. But here we are. I think the redone music sounds great, incredibly faithful, but definitely sounds better with some actual instruments and stuff like that. I think 99.9% of the remastered, I'm completely redone visual style is great. I think all the characters look great. I think the sort of almost reminds me of a Link's Awakening on Switch. That kind of art style I think works really well. Having both games in the collection makes sense because they're very similar. They're very similar games, so I think having them in one makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I just couldn't I couldn't be happier. I legitimately could not be happier to see this. So that's me as about as coherent as I can make my excitement, trying to translate pure hype into coherent sentences. Yeah, I did my best.
I mean, yeah, I think Advance Wars for me, I don't have quite the same attachment as Wyatt does, but for me, like that game he was talking about was Monkey Ball, so this was like a direct of dreams. I think is the way I would put it, of like games that people never expected to see again. Suddenly
it's that game,
appearing.
It's that game, and like I said, it's that game that you don't just love, but is important to you. It's like important to who you are. And I think everyone has that game, no matter how like big or small it is, or what the game really is, it's important to you in some way. And that's what Advance Wars is to me. So legitimately, I was crying when I saw it. I shed a couple of tears of delight because I was 110% convinced that I would never, ever see this.
Because like, it is one of those franchises that was 100% dead. Like, Advance Wars had not seen a new game for close to 20 years, I think.
Days of Ruin was a disturbingly accurate title because it really, put a halt on the franchise. It ruined the franchise for a while. So, I'm just... I finally understand how the Elden Ring crowd must have felt when Elden Ring was announced. And I understand what you guys are going through. So at least I can empathize with you guys on that level. But imagine my surprise. There was no lead up to this. There were no leaks or anything. It was
that's the most surprising part about this.
Genuine surprise.
Like, so little of this direct was leaked.
Yep.
In fact, I don't think anything that Nintendo was working on directly got leaked. It was the only rumors we had were the Monkey Ball stuff because of trademarks and the Mario and Rabbids sequel.
This direct, and specifically this announcement, reminded me why I hate leaks so much. I think people that leak information out there to the public about game releases, there are certain things of like internal studio structure and stuff like that. That's a different story. But when they're just leaking what projects are coming out and stuff, I think that sucks. And we need to allow it to be surprised and excited at press conferences like this, because you're kind of robbing us of these kind of like spurts of happiness. You know what I mean?
I don't have as much of a vendetta as Wyatt does to leakers. Before you make this too personal against leakers, but
I'm saying leaking game announcements, other leaks that kind of expose other things. That's different, obviously. But what I'm talking about, just purely games. I want to have the excitement when they're announced, not this might be coming out and then.
See, I don't have a problem with the leakers. What I have a problem with is the people that leak it, or that share the leaks on the front page of everything. That is what gets me. It's not the leakers themselves, it's the people that put it everywhere. Especially like YouTube thumbnails. That's the big one that gets me, is if you put a leak in your thumbnail, please just kindly don't.
I don't know. It just feels like a story spoiler almost to me, where
All right, this is a whole separate discussion. I'm gonna cut it off because I know we'll talk about this for an hour because I think we've actually talked about leaks a long time before. So we need to keep going and finish out this showcase so we can talk about overall thoughts. Little game franchise known as Mario Party got another game. This is notable because Super Mario Party that just came out a couple of years ago was notoriously bare bones and kind of just lackluster. Like it had a lot of fun mini games, but the actual boards and whatnot were just condensed, tiny, and not very fun. So to see Mario Party actually get a collection of good things, and this is where I'm like, okay, it is a little low effort because it is just a like redone collection of other things that already exist. But those things are good, so it means this game will probably at least be good. Right? Like this is at least going to be a serviceable Mario Party collection.
mm-hmm.
So that's what has me excited. It's not that I think this game, in of any of its own rights, is going to be special or anything. It's just that so long as they pick the right 100 mini games and whatnot, you got a banger of a game because Mario Party's a good franchise. It has nothing to do with this game in particular. But I want to play more Mario Party, and there's no good ones on Switch.
Yeah.
So I want it. That's happening. All right. Now, I think another big announcement to a lot of people. I don't know if either of you two follow this franchise. I know why it doesn't actually. Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Because I'm tight.
I don't yet, but maybe someday.
So hot off the trail of the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne remaster, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is a game that was announced at the Switch reveal. This is the thing that like gets a bunch of people. This game was announced at the Switch reveal and was implied to be coming relatively soon.
If only they knew.
And we have not seen gameplay of it until this point, and they come in swinging. We saw UI. We saw protagonist man looking pretty as hell. Love him. All right, love that boy.
He's cool.
Great design. I'm liking everything I see here, and that is the big thing with Atlas. Puts out a lot of good JRPGs. Shin Megami Tensei is this weird franchise because like the games are spread out on a lot of consoles in weird ways. Nocturne 3 is finally like available for people to play, but Shin Megami Tensei 4 is still locked to the 3DS. Like it's such a weird because like even though I have 2 3DSs that I could play Shin Megami Tensei 4 on, I don't want to do it because I don't want to play a 100-hour JRPG on a 3DS.
3DS.
I don't want to do it. It sounds awful. So seeing that we're finally getting like a home console Shin Megami Tensei game for the first time in a long, long time is very exciting. So looking forward to it. Everything they showed looked really good. I think it's probably one of the better cases for a Switch Pro existing because that footage looked pretty smooth, and the game looked a little bit too good.
Yeah.
For the Switch. I think it and Mario and Rabbids are kind of the two biggest contenders for a Switch Pro existing right now. Because those two looked a little bit too good for running on the Switch itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really exciting reveal. They showed a lot of cool demon stuff. For those who don't know, Shin Megami Tensei is the kind of sister franchise of Persona. It's the games that Persona kind of spun off of. So, if you're a fan of Persona, you're probably going to find something to like about Shin Megami Tensei. Looking really good.
Or dislike it and just say that it's copying Persona without knowing that they used to be the same thing.
That Persona is actually just copying Shin Megami Tensei. So, that's happening. Unless I'm forgetting something, I think that leaves us with the final announcement. The final big blast.
I think that's it.
Breath of the Wild 2, we saw the game. The actual game. And it's coming relatively soon. So, next year, we're going to get Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild 2 has blasted us into the sky. All the rumors of the game being underground, completely wrong. That's my favorite part about this, is there were so many rumors about Breath of the Wild 2 featuring like a major underground It was gonna like focus really heavily on like underneath Hyrule. No, we're
Which,
going to
to
the
be
sky.
fair, was supported by the first reveal, which was this whole underground sequence. So
Yep.
I can kind of see where that was coming from, but it just goes to show that not all rumors are to be taken
No.
seriously, which we all knew, but sometimes we forget, and we should be reminded.
No, we're
every
going
while.
straight to the sky. You could say we're heading skyward because Skyward Sword is also coming to the Switch.
Which I think for Breath of the Wild is the better choice.
Oh, yeah.
Personally,
Give me that
Way better than
glider
underground.
height flying from like the top of infinity down.
it's a very vertical game, right? The original, and so going up further just makes
Yeah.
more sense.
You want that glider to shine. I am super excited to see how they do things here. They showed some time manipulation stuff. Link could like water drop himself through a island. We saw punished Venom Link. That was very exciting. Of Link having like a Sheikah arm
Yeah,
with
I
this
thought he
whole
looked
apparatus
sick.
on it. It looked really, really cool.
Has
at least
more
got
of
some
that-
new looks.
It has more of that good cell shaded art style that I adore so much. It looks they probably I'm going like looking at the footage again, they probably reused a lot of assets and I don't even care because the
It's
game
they
already
can,
looked
yeah.
gorgeous.
No, that's not a
Gorgeous.
problem.
No,
Asset
never.
reuse. This is the time for my Wyatt tangent. It's asset reuse. People keep saying that like it's a bad thing. Asset reuse is the reason we have video games.
Yeah.
So
It's
often.
one of the smartest things you can do as a developer is
Look,
use
if
it
you can,
correctly.
people have knocked Ghost of Tsushima for like if you pay really close attention at a bamboo forest, you can notice the same cluster of bamboo rotated a few times. I'm like,
Ugh.
come
Every
on.
game, every game is like
Every
that.
video game tree, yeah, like
Yeah.
any game that heavily features a forest is going to have maybe
You can
3
bet
or
they
4
probably got,
types of
like,
trees.
10 to 20 tree models. They just smatter them everywhere and rotate them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a secret. Yeah, I think.
Sorry
I,
to disappoint you or
if you're
something.
gonna copy assets from anything, copy them from Breath of the Wild. Like,
Because not only is it
That
is
game
it
looks so
pretty in its own way, it's also kind of a timeless look as well.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
It's it's an art. It's so stylized that it's an art style that can just remain as is for a good long while because it just looks beautiful as is and it doesn't age
Definitely.
that much.
So yeah, that is the Nintendo Direct. I think hype levels here until the Direct were pretty low for this E3. We didn't see a lot of like major announcements from most companies, aside from Xbox, obviously. But even then, like stuff like Stranger of Paradise, the Final Fantasy Origins thing that was rumored and pretty hyped up, presented really badly.
Yes, and that's
Despite
the
it being
important
good,
thing.
it just presented really
Yeah.
poorly, which I think killed a lot of interest in it. So
I feel like the you were saying in general, right? People were kind of like lukewarm on everything. A lot
Yeah.
of what I've seen is very negative towards it, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people are saying it is because I think we got a lot of cool stuff out of it. But
yeah.
it's definitely not one of the strongest years. I'd agree with that. You know,
Well, I'm gonna say
if
I
you're
think
putting it on a rating scale, it's like a 6 or a 7.
I think games wise, this Xbox and Nintendo have a lot of things cooking that look really good. The thing that kind of stood out is there are a lot of games that were missing from the C3 that we were expecting
Yes.
to see something from, and
As
that goes for
much
like
as-
every single publisher.
Yeah, as much as I think Xbox gave one of the best shows, there were so many things that we just got no word on whatsoever that I
Exactly.
personally was expecting. I mean, that's why I put it at S tier during our
It's like
during
you were
our tier
expecting
list
to see
video.
stuff like Hellblade.
I was expecting to see Fable. I was expecting to see Hellblade. Just a lot of
At least
other
one of the
things.
two, right? Like they have a lot of these
Yeah.
games that people are really hyped for, and I think
Perfect Dark is another one.
Yeah,
like
Perfect
maybe
Dark was
something from
announced.
Perfect Dark. And a good stuff, but not stuff that they had previously announced and decided not
it's
to
a little
follow
bit
up on.
concerning about those things that were previously announced.
Yeah.
I think is
Yeah.
the way to put it.
I
So that
wanna-
stood
I
out a
wanna
lot with
read it-
Xbox.
I want to read it as we want to show more when we actually have more to show, but I don't know for certain.
Well,
if
I
that's
think
really
the way to
what
read it is that like I think the games industry has done a good job of hiding the impact of COVID until now.
Hmm.
I think this was the show that like
Yes.
finally people that are not in the industry are going to realize that like okay, even if companies have worked well from home, that still means they had like at least probably a couple months of adjustment of like having to move all of their setups to homes, having to completely redo probably their infrastructure of like how you access files and whatnot.
Reschedule everything.
Reschedule
it from-
everything, work with new stuff. So super difficult to do.
Take it from a couple of devs that have worked on games from home before. It sucks.
Especially when you like have to get on new people on board and whatnot. It's just it is
onboarding. Yeah.
I think people have kind of figured it out by now, but for games that have been in production, I think it was going to be a huge... Like, I feel like a lot of games probably lost, like, a good 6 months of time, and not due to their fault, 100%. Like, I think this is totally a situation of the new setups, people probably don't have the same workflow at home. It's just very different. And there are people that can work efficiently from home, but not everyone's going to be that way. So...
Yeah, and it's partially why I've struggled if there's a game that came out last year or in the last 6 months or so. I've struggled if a game comes out and maybe like from a technical perspective it's not finished, or just in general it doesn't seem finished. I had such a hard time struggling myself with like, was this just incompetence from the studio, or was this a COVID situation? And I don't want to use it as an excuse for a bad game, but there were so many moments where I'm like, I can't tell if this was affected by. It's hard to say because, like you said, they've done such a good job of hiding it. But it's such a hard time judging the quality of something because I wanted to be really lenient on like, yeah, working from home sucks. This all sucks. I kind of want to give you some leniency because of that.
Yeah, and I think the best decision from these studios that are having issues is just delay announcements. Make sure you don't over publicize things that shouldn't be publicized. Like, be careful about setting dates, stuff like that. We're finally like starting to hit the tail end of this, and I think things are going to go soon back to normal. But there's going to be another adjustment period of people going back to the office. That's probably going to add on to further delays. So I think a lot of these things that weren't shown just in that situation, and that's stuff like we talked about Hellblade for Nintendo. This Bayonetta 3 is a big question mark. I think there's just a lot of question marks with a lot of these games. So I'm curious to see how things will turn out in the future. That does remind me, we didn't talk about Babylon's Fall. One other Platinum game that showed up. We talked about it a little bit last week. I think I do want to mention it briefly because I think that is a game that probably changed styles pretty heavily because of COVID.
Yeah.
I got this running theory. I think Babylon's Fall might not have been intended to be a live service game. And the reason it's going live service is because of adjustments during COVID. Of them realizing maybe not everything they wanted to do is going to work 100% by the time they wanted to release the game. And so they're going live service.
So a game that doesn't seem like it was supposed to be a live service that then became live service under Square Enix's supervision.
Well, because the thing I do
things.
believe that Platinum had that game set up to be a co-op multiplayer dungeon crawler. That's the part that I believe. Whether or not it was meant to be a live service game, that's the big question mark for me. Because I do think that game showed a little weirdly of Platinum is one of those companies you tend to get excited about their announcements because they make a lot of good games, but occasionally they'll make something that's just a little weird and not so great, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game or the Avatar Last Airbender game that wasn't amazing. Stuff like that, and Babylon's Fall, I'm hoping isn't like that because if a Platinum live service game has potential, that could be really good, as long as they don't get too crazy with the monetization and stuff like that, and that's what has me worried because Square Enix has produced Avengers, which is a train wreck, and continues to be a train wreck, which is the surprising part of like they're still doing the like $15 skins and stuff like that, and advertising that, and I don't get it because I legitimately think that game could have a resurgence. I not even could have had. I think they've passed the point now, where it could have. But if they had quickly backpedaled, I think they could have salvaged a lot of that game because the gameplay is pretty fun. When it works, it's just the whole progression of monetization and everything is not well designed. So it's a little sad to see Babylon's Fall go that way. If it does. Hopefully it doesn't. All right. Any other final thoughts from our recap of E3?
I think we about covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think overall it's I think it's worth pointing out like it seemed to be a pretty good like presenting time for like indies. So if you're an indie person, make sure you like just scoured Steam or like any of the shows or whatever where they announced
Yeah.
stuff, because we definitely did not remember a lot because they were probably like actually hundreds.
Well, and also, I think part of the reason we're avoiding talking about indies is a lot of them don't have dates, don't have times they're going to
Yes.
come out. So I don't want to get people hyped up for a game that could not come out or might just be like 5 years away. So you can be sure that as soon as some of these games come out, we're going to be talking about them a lot. Like, we talked about Narita Boy in the past. That is a really cool indie.
So
Bloodstained. There's tons of indies that we're going to be talking about as soon as they're actually out and released. All right. That means we're to the final portion of the show. Is everyone ready? For
Ready as I'll ever
shout-outs.
be.
All right. I'm going to start because I got one sitting. I got to give a shout out to this little game called Snake RX, SNKRX. It's $3. $3 on Steam. This game,
It's taken you too.
this game is a roguelike snake game. You'd think for $3 this game would be like not have a lot of depth or anything. This game is incredible. It is incredibly fun to play. The music's banging. It is a really, really good roguelite, and it's $3. Like, come on. Snake RX, look it up. It's great. There's tons of footage on YouTube if you want to see people play it. It's a lot of fun. The only thing, if you're a big roguelite fan, that you might be missing is there's not really any meta progression, but it's a true roguelite. It is very much you play this game just to play it because it's really fun. And it is. And I hope, I want them to port this game to Switch. Or even mobile. This would be a good mobile roguelite. Perfectly tuned
It would be
for
a good mobile game.
Do it, because I will buy it again. It was really good. All right. Who else is ready?
Shout out to Castlevania on Netflix. I've been talking about almost nothing on our Discord other than that for the past couple of days. It is by far the greatest video game adaptation ever made, and I say that with 100% confidence. I think it's really, 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 really good. And incredibly faithful to the games, but also isn't a complete incoherent mess to people that don't know a thing about them. So, yeah, that's me.
All right, Brett. What you got?
Shout out to that person that does the group project, but only like put their name on it, and that person is Bandai Namco for showing one thing that you already showed, and then releasing trailers for other things the next day. Pretty awesome.
Bandai Namco is so much of a confusing press conference. I don't even think we're going to talk about them in the actual thing, because like,
No.
there's literally nothing to talk about. Like, you can't even include them in E3, because that's harmful to them. It's setting poor expectations. Oh, all right. We're done. We did it. It's time to play the outro. As always, podcast 7 a.m. Eastern in the mornings. Catch it on YouTube at Double Radio Gamescast or on the podcast platform of your choice. Hit us with the sub button on the YouTube so we can get a channel name. That'd be great.
Someday.
We're on the way.
Someday.